they either have lost their mother, have a bad relationship with their mother, or sometimes have issues that they don't feel their own mother would be the best person to talk about with them. So it basically has become that. When I first started the business, I also thought people might be interested in services like, well, some of this I did. I help people write letters to their landlords, or I help them find new insurance or new doctors or things like that too. But by and large, people who come to me are really just wanting that kind of listening ear, and it doesn't necessarily have the idea of there's something wrong with them, so they need to go to therapy.
This is Meredith for Real, the Curious Introvert, and I'm Meredith. I explore the questions people think but don't ask out loud, either because they're taboo or thanks to cultural hypnosis. My mission, and yours if you choose to accept it, is to inspire curiosity by exploring the nuance and paradox of our world. Each episode is different, so bring your ADD and your earbuds and have a look around. Hey Curiositors, it's me, Meredith. Mother's Day is around the corner, so I wanted to introduce you to this unique mom for hire, because it's obviously super interesting that someone would rent themselves out as a professional mom, but also because Mother's Day can be hard for those who've lost their mom, are estranged from them, or have an otherwise complicated relationship with them. And this guest would be an amazing and affordable resource for you if that's your situation. Towards the 20-minute mark, you'll hear her give her 20-year-old self advice, which turned out to be less advice and more grace to her younger self for doing the best she could with the circumstances that she had. And this sort of grace over regret perspective was my major takeaway from the episode. At the end of the episode, you'll also hear from 3 listeners about the best advice their mom ever gave them. And if you end up liking this episode, you also might like the one I did with the dad of the internet, Rob Kinney, in episode 139. If you're a repeat listener here, thank you. If you haven't already left a rating on Apple Podcast, I would be so very grateful. Even if you're too tongue-tied to leave a review, that rating part really sets me up to take the podcast to the next level with high caliber guests and meaningful sponsorships. And if you are new here, welcome. Around here, we press play to get curious, disrupt the algorithm, and grow into better humans. We talk about everything from adult friendship to food addiction. So bring your ADD and your earbuds and have a look around. There's no specific order to listen to episodes. All right, enjoy the show. While therapy and life coaching have become increasingly popular, sometimes you just want your mom. My next guest recognized this need when she moved to an area where almost no one seemed to be over 35. Realizing that she was the oldest person in cafes and restaurants, she knew that there was a need for young people to have someone to talk to who's mom-like, but not their mom. She decided to combine her experience as a drug and alcohol abuse counselor, a businesswoman, a Broadway director and producer, and create Need a Mom, an hourly rent-a-mom service filling a need for clients in their teens to 40s. Today, she's going to talk about the importance of mentorship and give us a peek inside what it's like to be a mother of 2 and a mother figure to many. Stage mom to surrogate mom, millennial mentor, shy extrovert, Nina Keneally. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Meredith. It's great to be here with your listeners.
I have to say, you are like my favorite type of person because I get so excited and so intrigued by people who have many, many different aspects of their life, like you do, like all of the theater stuff and being a drug and alcohol abuse counselor. And not only that, but then they basically invent a job. Like you take everything that you're good at and you roll it up into one, and there's no one position out there for it. So you make the position. Like you are my favorite type of people, basically.
That's great. Thank you. I mean, yeah, it was the kind of situation where I'm a person who's always looking for something new, something that interests me, something that I can dive right into. And it was an experience, as you said, that I just thought I have these different skill sets. How can I put them all together and use them for some good purpose?
And you've been momming professionally since 2015. So could you explain what that kind of client interaction looks like. Is it hourly? Is it virtual? Is it in person? What does that look like?
It looks like all of that. When I was living in Brooklyn, and I'm not living in Brooklyn now, I'm in Western Massachusetts, it started out with the idea that it would be primarily in person. I did. I met clients in coffee shops, for walks in the park, at the movies, that sort of thing. And even actually, if I got to know them, even at my home, I would not meet anyone when I first met them at my home. I wasn't comfortable with that. But when we moved to the Berkshires, and also, of course, throughout the pandemic, there was a certain need that could be met in person. So it became primarily virtual these days. And it's interesting, too, because that has made me accessible to people, certainly throughout the country, but even throughout the world.
So like the people overseas would reach out to you, and what are they asking of you when they, I'm assuming, email you?
Yeah, well, they email me and just say, they usually say, I was thinking I really needed a mom, and I went to Google and I put in I need a mom, and you came up, and I just need a mom. I just need a mom to talk to. They either have lost their mother, have a bad relationship with their mother, or sometimes have issues that they don't feel their own mother would be the best person to talk about with them. So it basically has become that. When I first started the business, I also thought people might be interested in services like, some of this I did. I help people write letters to their landlords, or I help them find new insurance or new doctors or things like that too. But by and large, people who come to me are really just wanting that kind of listening ear, and it doesn't necessarily have the idea of there's something wrong with them, so they need to go to therapy. Even though I don't feel that way about therapy. I think therapy is a wonderful thing, and people should use therapy whenever they think they might need it. But some people are a little hesitant to give therapy a try. So I think I'm like a gateway drug to therapy.
I love it. Never would I thought describing oneself as a gateway drug as a super positive thing that we should all endorse and talk about. That's really interesting that your clients have geared towards the stuff that you can't Google. I guess it makes sense. But last year I interviewed Rob Kenny of The Dad How Do I? Are you familiar with him?
I am.
And a lot of his stuff was like the practical stuff, like stuff you could probably Google, but it was kind of nice because you had this like fatherly figure who would tell you, and he would end every video with, "You can do it, and I'm proud of you." And, you'd be sitting in front of the video with tears in your eyes going, why am I feeling feelings right now?
Yeah.
But it's interesting that most of your clients have geared away from the how do I write a letter to my landlord, for example, more to stuff that is less Googleable. I'm really making up words now, but I think you understand what I'm saying.
I know. I got it. Yeah. And I admire what he's doing a lot. I think those are really practical skills, and I'm glad that people are using his services and his YouTube channel and all that to get those. I mean, I have offered people, want to learn how to make a roast chicken? I'll take you shopping. We'll pick out the chicken. We'll pick out the herbs. We'll go back to your place. We'll, do it together. Because I don't have, you can buy a roast chicken at Boston Market or whatever, but not everybody can make a chicken, although it's pretty darn easy. And I think economical for people too. But people have just not taken me up on that stuff too much. It's interesting. When I started the business and got a lot of attention, I was asked to go on some talk shows and things, and they asked me to do things. Come on our talk show and make the perfect cup of cocoa or darn a sock. And I got to say, I was really resistant to doing that because I didn't want to perpetuate the stereotypes of that's what mothers are there for, to make you cocoa and darn your socks. Sure, they are. But I wanted this service to have a more, I guess, a slightly more serious intent to it. Not that learning to do things isn't serious, but I felt that I didn't want to just go into that tropes of, look, this is what mommy does,
Tropes. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Well, it sounds like it hasn't, because I think the magic of mothers is not what they do for you, but it's how they make you feel. Kind of like I said in the intro, like you can Google all the stuff and you can go to therapy and you can even get a life coach, but sometimes you just want a mother figure. And when I was thinking about like people that I've met like over the years who really could have used you. I thought most about young military wives, and their
Mm.
spouse is active duty, and they, in the case of the real people that I'm thinking of, they have young children under 3, and they're so overwhelmed. They got married really young at 19 or 20. Now suddenly they're a wife. They're a military wife, which is a whole nother thing. And they're trying to run a household, and they're, trying to navigate all these things, and they don't have a mother figure to help them. Have you ever had a client like that before?
Not a military wife, but absolutely. I mean, I feel a real kinship to that. When I had my 2 sons, I was living far away from where my mother lived. I actually had no friends. I had been living in New York, and my husband had a house in Connecticut. And we used to go back and forth a lot. But when we had our first child, I was staying in Connecticut a lot, and he worked most of the time, and he worked a lot. And I was like, I kept thinking about that. I would have killed to have somebody. I'm not killed, but so grateful to have somebody who came
Yeah.
over and just held the baby while I took a shower, or, well, let me take a walk around the block and get some fresh air and just talk to me about that, that little that rash that the baby has, and reassure me. So yeah, I have done that. And I do that with some friends too, just because I have I remember how hard that is. It's so hard to be a young mother without great supports. So yes, I guess there's a little bit of need a grandma in there too, but I feel more like I'm supporting the mother than the infants at that point.
That's true. That's a very good point. And it kind of speaks to the importance of that multi-generational mentorship. And especially for young adults, because you go through high school being told where to go, what time to be there, what to do next. And then all of a sudden you graduate and you're expected to have, a direction, and expected to have all these skills, and expected to have a plan. And it's just, it's kind of laughable. Do you think that personal mentorship is important in every decade of life, or is there more of a need for it in that, post high school 20-year-old decade?
Well, certainly, I think there's a big need for it in 20s and 30s, especially so many young people these days. They have spent so much effort just, getting their grades good enough to get into college, and the extracurricular activities and the AP classes and the everything else. And then they get out and they're trying to find a job in a competitive job market in many fields, and then figure out how to, have a life and a job at the same time. So there's a lot of, and they've missed some of them, not all of them, but a lot of young professional kids have missed the practical skills, like how to do laundry, or how to make that chicken, or how to balance their checkbook, all that stuff, because they've been so academically focused. So they need help navigating the whole world in a way. But yeah, I mean, I can say to you now, as I got older, it was very helpful for me to know even older women who had, gone through that phase of life, who could help me navigate what's coming next. So it doesn't surprise you when you get there. So I don't know, I believe that, and I think women are really good at mentoring each other in different stages of life. I think it's a skill. Not every woman, of course, but many women have really good skills in wanting to help other women succeed in whatever they're doing at whatever phase of life they're in, and like to share their experience and wisdom. Women are pretty, as you know very well, women are inveterate sharers.
That's so true. I think community is our default. Right? Like when I have
Yeah.
I have a problem, I will go, and it's like not a problem always, but maybe I have like a new thing that I'm exploring. Let's use plants as an example, because that's a real example. Like I am
Yes.
one of those people that in the course of 2020 and 2021, my plant problem became quite severe, and I'm not one to just buy a living thing and let it die. And so I want to take care of them. So where do I go? Facebook groups. I'm going to find a couple of Facebook groups. I'm going to find Reddit, and I'm going to ask questions and post pictures and cheer other plant moms on. I mean, it is a little
Fantastic. Yeah.
it's kind of ridiculous, but it's also not, because it's very practical. And you're right. I think something, I don't know, like, God was like, here's your uterus, and here's this really weird need to always share everything you have with another person, including what shampoo you're using. Like, it's just built in.
Yeah. Well, and especially, if you've been mistakes. If you killed off your plants or your hair's turned green at some point, don't want that to happen to other people. You want to share, what you learned from mistakes, so other people don't make the same mistakes. I think that's a great way of looking at it.
Have you noticed, or I should say, what have you noticed as far as characteristics, strengths, and differences from young people today compared to like when you were raising your kids and maybe when you were coming up? Is there anything notable? We're going to take a quick break to appreciate those who support the show. And when we come back, you'll hear about the difference between what Nina does and therapy, why parents should butt out, and the one request she always turns down. If you ever wonder where I find guests for the show, the answer is it varies a lot. And since it's something that gets asked a lot, I started including the backstory of each episode in my Monday emails. And then on Saturday, I share cliff notes and clickable links in case what you heard was so good you wish you could have taken notes. If you want to be included, text REAL to 66866 if you're in the US, or go to meredithforreal.com if you're elsewhere. If you're listening north of the state of Georgia, mosquitoes are not top of mind right now. But if you're in the Florida Panhandle or Gulf Coast of Alabama, you're already dusting off your grill and citronella candles. Make life easy for future you and get your property scheduled for a mosquito treatment with Insect. I've been using them since 2019 and they continue to impress me. They guarantee their work and pollinators are always top of mind. Check them out at ensec.net. If you watch the show on YouTube, then you see the beautiful backdrop of Trader John's, the exhibit where I record the show inside the Pensacola Museum of History. This is just one museum under the umbrella of the UWF Historic Trust. If you're planning a trip to Pensacola and need an indoor activity option, pick up a ticket. It's good for a whole week. Get your tickets in person so you can show the agent one of my emails and get $2 off an adult ticket. Now back to the show. Remember to stay till the end where I give you a sneak peek of next week's episode.
Oh, sure. I mean, and this is you've probably done or will do programs on this. I mean, the pressures. This is very serious from social media and the way kids compare themselves and what they have and don't have and how they look and don't look and all those sorts of things. I mean, even when my kids were coming up, they were still the age where we finally got one, computer, and it was in the den, and nobody had phones in their room, and and so you really were just like I fooled myself into thinking I was monitoring what they were doing. Of course, they got away with a ton of stuff anyway, because that's what kids do.
Right.
But I think I do feel that the constant being on screens, and I'm as guilty of it as anybody now, there's much that it enhances in our lives, what's accessible to us on the internet and those sorts of things. But I think it has kept people to themselves more. They stay home more. They're not going out and getting many experiences. And for younger people, I mean, I was insecure enough as a teenage girl. I can't imagine being a teenage girl now with what you're bombarded with and what what you're expected of it. And I think it's a very, very challenging time. And I think that kind of spills over into when you get out of school and you get into the workforce, and you're so used to these comparisons and checking somebody getting a promotion that they posted about on Instagram or wherever, and you're thinking, Jesus, I haven't had a promotion. And I mean, I think it kind of drives wedges into us as opposed to bringing us together in some ways.
Oh, that's so true. That's so true. Yeah. Yeah. It's very, it can be very problematic. Yeah. And I also think about, do you ever do this when you're going through life and you think about, what you're doing in the present? Hopefully that's usually helpful, but you're also thinking about yourself from the past. And now that I'm, 40, I'm also thinking about my mother when she was 40, because I remember that she was a young mom. So, cause I was in high school. So, or wait, was I in college? No, I was in college. Oh God, I was in college. Oh, it's so weird. I can't imagine having a college student right now, but that's what I'm talking about. That flip flop.
Yeah.
It's almost like a screen change in your brain. God, I hope that this resonates with you because it makes me sound kookadoo. But what I'm trying to get at is I find myself, in different decades of my life comparing my memories of like my mom at that time and how she acted and like even like little things like mannerisms and stuff. And I'm wondering if when you're with your clients, do you ever think about like your mom and that relationship or the advice that she gave you? Are your thoughts as weird as
Oh,
mine?
sure. I don't think those are weird at all, Meredith. I think
Okay, good.
we all have thoughts, if not exactly the same, similar. Yeah, I mean, of course I do. I also think my mom, I'm very cognizant with my clients of the great stuff I got from my mom, which was a sense of humor, and engagement with other people. Lots of, she was a great cook, lots of things like that. My mother was also the very fearful about a lot of things and very held my brother and me really closely, especially after my father died. And I very consciously with my son made made the decision to do the opposite, to not do that sort of thing. And part of what drove me as a mother to have a rich life and a full life was I didn't want to what happened to me. When my brother and I left, my mother didn't know what to do with herself. My father was dead then, and she just didn't know how to have a life. And I wanted to know that if when my kids inevitably left the nest, that I was still going to have a rich, full, interesting life. So I was very conscious of that from the get go. And I feel that with my clients too. One of the things I can do with my clients that a traditional therapist can't do is I can be a little forthcoming. I can disclose information about my relationship with my mom. If I had an issue, if a client is having an issue with his or her mother that's similar to something that happened to me, I can say, yes, that happened to me, and this is how I dealt with it, or this is how I should have dealt with it. I can tell them they're not alone in what's happening to them. That I really feel it because something like that happened to me. So, and I think that can be very, I don't know if comforting is the right word, but reassuring anyway, that these issues, these problems you're having, yeah, they come, but they can also go too. There's a way to deal with them, to make them better, to to either save your own self, or to redefine your relationship with your parents, which I think is also a very important goal of young adulthood. Also for parents to redefine their relationship with their children, equally as important.
How much percentage of your conversations with your clients are like this, like what you're describing, more on an interpersonal level?
Oh, almost all of them. Oh, almost all.
Navigating those
And,
relationships. That's interesting in light of what you said about the social media.
yeah, I think there is a correlation between that. I haven't thought long and hard about exactly what that is, but people, there's an essential human need to communicate, to tell your story to somebody. And for somebody, sometimes the best thing I can do is just listen and acknowledge that I'm listening. And you were talking about before, one of the things that's meant the most to me is at the end, sometimes of talking to people, they go, I'm so glad we did this. I feel so much better. I didn't even understand. I just feel so much better. Thank you. And I'm so gratified by that I can help anybody feel a little better about what they're going through, even for a little while. That's as rewarding a thing as I can come up with right now.
I could definitely see that. What advice would you give to yourself, your 20-year-old self, if you could?
Oh, wow. It's funny. My initial answer was be braver, but looking back, I was pretty brave given where I came from and what I was doing and the generation I was from. I think I was brave, but I would take more risks, I think. I would tell myself to take some more risks.
And what advice do you give to parents now for raising this generation of young people?
Well, it depends on, different ages. I concentrated mostly on like young adults, and my advice for parents of young adults is very simple. Someone once asked me if I would do a book proposal about a book of tips for parents of young adults. And I said, well, sure, I'll give it a try, but it's going to be a really short book. And they said, why? And I said, because it's basically going to be, the advice is basically going to be, if you're asking yourself whether you should butt to your child's life or butt out of your child's life, unless it's a life or death situation, my answer is always butt out. let, 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 I like with teenagers too. Let them take responsibility for their actions. Don't let them get away with stuff. Don't make it too easy for them. I think the way to build strong, resilient adults from children is to give them a sense of who they are and a trust in them to learn from their mistakes and let them make not dangerous mistakes, but some mistakes that they have to address and move forward with.
I think that's pretty solid advice. I am curious with every, a career that you've had, multiple careers, overlapping careers, and now this really cool Need a Mom service. What's next for you? Do you have your next career already picked out, or is it a different evolution of the mom service?
Well, I don't, maybe a different evolution of the mom service, but I do use those talents now. I'm involved with a mentoring steering committee at a community college. We set up retirees with students at community college, and that can be any age. They can be, late teens, early 20s, up to like adults going back to school, mentors to help them navigate the work-life balance situation, all that. So that kind of is a continuation of what I'm doing with this. There's a colleague and I here in the Berkshires are talking about, and we'll do this very slowly if we do it. We're talking about trying to do a podcast about some of the interesting people who in the past decade or so have moved up here and why they moved up here and what they're doing. Because I find this gentleman and I find that there are a lot of really fascinating people living here kind of under the radar. Some of them are under the radar. Some of them are doing really interesting things. We have a neighbor who's a Vietnamese artist, chef, farmer, and he's doing all sorts of interesting stuff. So we'd love to talk about him. I mean, I like you, I think. I like searching out people doing interesting things, exploring, pushing their boundaries, trying stuff. I mean, as I'm sure you would say more than I, that's just a joyous thing to do.
Oh, it really is. Yeah, yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. I think that I often say that there's such treasure in the nuance of people and their lives. And in order to unlock that treasure, you just have to know the right question to ask. And thankfully, podcasting is such a great platform by which to ask those questions and then share it with everyone.
Questions. For sure.
So when you said interesting people, that made me think of one last question before we sign off. I'm curious to know the most interesting or strange requests that you've received in your mom business that you entertained.
Oh my goodness.
I know you've gotten some that you have turned down.
Yeah, there are some I have. There's some I have turned down. I mean, the ones I turned down are probably the most amusing and entertaining, as a matter of fact. Because the ones I do are pretty, they're pretty straightforward. But there are things that I didn't mention to you that I've turned down. Like, I think it's very funny. I often get contacted by young men who want me to pretend to be their mother and talk to their girlfriend.
Yeah, you turn that down. You don't do that.
Their mother.
Yeah.
I turn that down. I tell them, this is a really bad way to start a relationship, because if you think there might be a future with this young woman, someday she's going to actually meet your real mom, and it's not going to be me. And as Ricky Card used to say, Lucy, you'll have a lot of splaining to do.
Right. So instead, you gave them this mom advice that they didn't ask for, and they're like, "Wait a minute, no, I just wanted you to pretend." Do any clients stand out as really memorable? Like, really, oh, that was so heart touch. Like, when you have that interaction, I'm sure you have this in any career, but I could totally see it in yours, especially where something happens, an interaction, a moment, and you go, "That's why I do this."
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't want to disclose too much about this, but something like that happened last week with a young client I have who called me from, let me just say, she was in the hospital in the ER at like 7:30 at night, and something terrible had happened. And she just needed me to be there and talk to her. And I'm, of course, when that happens, I got to say, I have a minimal charge for my services, but I don't charge anybody for that if they've been my client. If they're just going through a really rough emergency patch like that, that's I'm not going to say, and yes, now you owe me $40. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, that's
but
awkward.
I do become very with the clients that I've had continuing relationships, and there are some of those. It transcends just the client professional relationship. There's a deep caring and a deep honoring of the trust that's been engendered through that.
I could totally see that. Can you tell people where they can engage in this service, where they can maybe, orbit what you're doing?
Sure, thank you. There's a website. It's www.needamomnyc.com. You can also find me as Need a Mom NYC on Facebook and on Instagram. And I think that's about it right now.
Well, that's perfect. Thank you so much for this. This was great.
Good pleasure, Meredith. Thank you so much. And I know Mother's Day is coming up. So to all the mothers out there, please have Happy Mother's Day and enjoy the time with your kids.
Yes. Happy Mother's Day.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. At the tone, please record your message.
I'm Kinga Phillips from Finding Adventure, and the best advice that my mom gave me is always find the humor in everything. Now, my mom went through the Second World War as a child and grew up in communist-era Poland. So, someone who can find the humor in life and always be able to laugh after experiencing that is truly a miraculous human being. So, anything my sister and I went through in life, my mom would always find the funny side of it and she would teach us to laugh. And to this day, no matter what happens, I'm able to find the humor in things. And truly, that has made my life infinitely better. So, thanks, Mom.
My mother gave me some really good advice early on in my life that I have tried to repeat and to share as often as I can. And it is this. I was coming back from an event. There were a lot of guys there that were bragging about all their accomplishments, everything they had going on. And I felt like I was just really small and really insignificant compared to these other guys. And my mother, she said, first of all, men just love to blow off. She would always put it that men just love to blow off. And let me just tell you this. When they do that, it's because they really don't have anything real going on. And my mother, she was in the 90s. She was an investments broker, and so very male-dominated field, especially in the 90s. And she would just lay these guys to waste. She was one of the top in her field in the United States, in the entire United States. And she would just sit there. She said, I go to these meetings and there's these men, they're just bragging and going on and on. But I know what their numbers are. I know what they've really been doing. And I know what they haven't been doing. And that's the work. And so thank you, Mom, for giving me the advice. Don't waste your energy bragging to other people. Use that energy to do the work.
My name's LaShante Cox, and I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. The best advice my mom gave to me was to always keep God first.
Thanks for listening. Did you think of someone you know while you listened? Help me grow the show by sharing this episode with that person. If you liked this episode, you'll also like the one I did with the dad of the internet, Rob Kinney, in episode 139. Stay tuned next week when I talk with a psychologist who specializes in social anxiety and answers your questions.